I'm joined by Ray Catterley, and he's going to be our main expert speaker today. Thanks for joining us, Ray. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Now I'm going to let you go ahead and take it away.
All righty. I sure appreciate that, and thanks for having me on. Okay. I sure do enjoy this. I've got a little bit of experience on a broad range of investing and investing activity, and I'll share some of those stories, and we'll just dive right in because I know everybody's going to, if you're on the West Coast, this is the start of your day. If you're on the East Coast, this might be what you're doing for lunch. But what I hope to do is introduce a topic and then generate a conversation and go from there. And that could be a conversation with yourself internally, and that could also be a conversation that you would have with others in the industry, maybe with your custodian like Advanta, maybe with other investors, colleagues, people that you like to pursue interest with, but something along that nature where that conversation takes place. And so today we're just going to have the introductions. Who am I? Why am I here talking to you? A little bit about myself. And then impact investing definitions, but about the history, some of the basic parameters of impact investing. Now, I'm not a college professor on the topic of impact investing. I am a fund manager for an investment fund that has that goal in mind. And so I did pull a little bit from academia, and if you went into research the topic, I'm going to touch very briefly on a high level about impact investing. If you went out into the internet, saw what academia was out publishing, what articles are out there, you're going to get a real good introduction to that. And then we're going to get specific. Again, my main objective, other than introducing a topic, is to spark a conversation and get the juices flowing on what might excite you, because investing can be very dry. It can be very boring. It can be very passive and something that's not satisfying. It can also be one of the most satisfying things that you do as an individual. It can be one of the most satisfying things that you do as far as building a legacy and how that takes shape. And I want to plug into that because that's the most exciting part. And as far as those conversations go, Clay, what I've done is I'm going to leave my schedule open from 4:30 to 5:30 for the next couple of weeks. And, if anybody wants to reach out to me just to either brainstorm, ask some specific questions, things like that, you definitely can. A little bit of introduction about me. I'm a dad, I'm a husband, I'm a real guy doing real things, living a real life. I'm also a speaker and an educator, business practitioner. And these pictures out here are fun for me because all but three of them are actively pursuing real estate investments. And one of the examples that I like to bring out is that, take the kids along, take the family along, take your friends along, take your dog along, maybe not your cat, but because that can be difficult, but real estate is everywhere unless you're on a boat. And you got to dock it too. And so have fun, get out there and enjoy it. I do. And it's one of those things to where if you know the basics of investment and the strategies that go along with it, it can be kind of dry to learn. It's like studying chess. Studying and learning chess can be very dry, but once you learn it, man, is it fun to play. And so I am not an attorney or a tax professional. I am a fund manager and a real estate broker, and my comments are here to inform and excite conversation, and I'm not giving law advice or tax advice. So impact investing definitions. I'm going to blaze through some of these first slides and then get a little bit more anecdotal and storytelling, and then hopefully that'll open up some conversations within your own sphere of influence as well. But impact investing is investing with a specific objective of achieving positive social and or environmental impacts as well as financial return. And there's a blended value to that, where the combination of economic, social, and environmental value produced by impact investing activity. And so what I would like to do is introduce the question of what does winning look like if you were going to accomplish what you wanted to accomplish with your investing. What one thing would you want to have happen? And then we'll get a little bit more specific later on. But I want you to start thinking about what does winning look like? Because if you don't define it, that intent, then you might be working with somebody who thinks you've won, but you think you've lost, and one of you is disappointed. If you're really clear on expectations and what you want to accomplish, and you have that connection, then it can be very satisfying and rewarding. And maybe you work together with a group, maybe it's your family, you all come together and you invest in a way just like you would get together at Thanksgiving and do something meaningful and purposeful. Investing can be like that for generations. And so, again, I want to reiterate that it can and should be exciting for you. So what impact investing is not? There's traditional philanthropy where money just gets given to a need. There's grant-based funding to social purposes organizations donating money for maximum impact. This would be something like an ongoing food bank or something like that, where a need is present and a need just gets met. Venture philanthropy invests in social purpose organizations with high financial risk in order to drive the organization's impact. But it can be combined with one or both of these things. What I want to make mention here is that, and I'll use my own fund as an example, is that we can work with these philanthropic organizations that give out grants to accomplish good, to fill a need, to fill a purpose, a mission. And one of the things that can be done in that is work with a private for-profit enterprise. Now, that might sound a little bit convoluted, but what it does is these organizations that want to deploy capital to accomplish that mission and that purpose, they want to not just have a one-hit wonder to where they put the money out there, the need gets met that day, but they want to perpetuate that. And that is something that if they can set up a business or an enterprise that is profitable and productive in doing that on an ongoing basis, two things can happen. It can be replicated, meaning if it's done here and all the conditions are same, it can be done somewhere else, and you can replicate that same activity, that same positive impact over and over, but then you can perpetuate it. It can go on and on and on. So where there might be a need today, you can meet the need today. Sometimes it just takes money and you push it at it. But if you have an enterprise, you can meet it for a long term. It's kind of like the old metaphor of giving a man a fish and teaching a man to fish. Well, both are important because you need a fish that day, but you also need to know how to take care of yourself on an ongoing basis. So a little bit of history. This reconnects a centuries-old tradition that held the wealthy responsible for the welfare of the broader community. And there's several examples here, and it goes back a long way. Moving forward into the more modern era, interest in social enterprises grew when somebody won the Nobel Peace Prize for creating Gremium Bank. This was a micro-lending institution, and I've got some sources that I'll share at the end, where if you want to take a deep dive and research into any of these topics, you can have I like to go hiking a lot, and there's a trailhead at the beginning of every trail. And if you're going to research something, which I enjoy doing as well, it's one of the things that really intrigues me. My kids call it going deep down the rabbit hole, and so that I'll show you the entrance to the rabbit hole, so to speak. And so again, I want to spark that type of research and that type of conversation. And so the history is coming back around, and it's being more prevalent. And then I've got several notes here, so I'm going to be referencing them throughout. But to make sure I don't miss anything, because there's some real good value here. But the consensus of what I'm putting out there is of several different reports. And so this consensus leads us to three basic parameters of impact investing. Now, this is a very high level flight over a lot of different research reports. So I'm going to talk about these parameters and just know that these are something that's consistent throughout if you're researching this. And then my purpose in sharing it with you today, again, this isn't a college level dissertation on impact investing. This is to help you go from a satellite view and then drill down onto the ground level, and doing that through your custodian, through the investments that you find, all of those resources that are there to you. So three basic parameters. Enterprise impact, social values of the goods and services and enterprises and management practices. Number two is investment impact. This is the investor's financial contribution to the social value. And then three is the non-monetary impact, contributions other than money that investors, fund managers, and others make to the enterprise's social value. And so the key thing here is the performance and the metrics and the targets. What are you trying to accomplish? And then monitoring and managing it. Because if you don't monitor and manage it, it goes back to, how do you know if you won? How do you know if you were successful? So there's three basic parameters. The enterprise impact, and there's some of these have a couple of layers to them, but they're, again, all at a high level of just thought-provoking introduction. So these subcategories are product impact. What is the impact of the goods and services that are produced? And the operational impact, the impact of the management practices on employees' health, economic security, well-being to the community, or environmental effects of supply chain and operations. This could be examples of the first one are, we've got a pandemic that was sweeping our globe, and there's a cure and a vaccine that's out there that are all coming about. Those were all through private investment and private enterprises and things like that. Other examples are if there's just any type of a better way to minimize inconvenience and suffering and maximize our ability to enjoy our day-to-day life and to be productive. This could be mobility, 3D printing for a prosthetic, any type of better mousetrap to where you improve the world around you and help others do the same. That's an impact of the product. Now, in operational impact, this could be an example of locally sourcing materials instead of shipping them in. In our fund, we're unfortunately having to ship in a lot of the materials that we're going to be using initially, but we're also making arrangements to produce those on a local level. So there is the effort to make that transition and doing it on purpose. And that's one of the parameters that we're measuring is, are we successful or not? Are we able to do that? Another quick story I like to point out is on the operational impact. I like seeing things where the people that are working within an organization, be it a company, manufacturing, production, anything like that, to where that person can also get a piece of the pie. I worked for corporations that are large multinational corporations, and they had a stock purchasing program. Well, if I owned a piece of it, then I got a piece of the profit. That was a little bit more distant than I would have liked, but, I still felt like I had an ownership to it. A lot of these things feed the human spirit. If you feed the human spirit to where somebody who's doing a task within a company actually feels the satisfaction of ownership, then it's going to be a lot more satisfying for both. The company is going to do better, and the people within the company are going to do better. And a good example of that, I remember as a kid, when we were traveling up to family, there was a restaurant we always liked to stop at, and it was an employee-owned cafeteria. And they were up against the wall of financial collapse, need to file bankruptcy. And one of the things they did was they just made it employee-owned and sold shares of all of the company to the employees. And my dad pointed this out, and he said, I want you to make note of how the basic lowest level worker and employee within this business interacts with you. And then we'll go to this other cafeteria that's just, a business, a franchise, and all they're getting is a paycheck at the end of the day. And it was remarkably notable. And it's something that was an impact that stuck with me. And I think that's one of the paradigms that we're going to see over the next several years are things like that, to where there can be that genuine connection between a business enterprise and the humans in the business enterprise. And so I really encourage that. And hopefully some of these ideas are starting to flow. So the three basic parameters, getting in here with the enterprise impact, there's outputs versus outcomes. And then this is the product or service or the effect of the output in improving people's lives. I'll give you a real good example for our specific fund. We're building homes, and the output could be an example. Triple P fund will build 10 homes. The outcome might be that so many tons of carbon were sequestered in building those homes, and a community was improved by some measurable note. So there's the output, and then there's the outcome, and measuring both against the other is important. So an impact investor must have two questions as a basis of measuring their enterprise impact. To what extent will the intended output occur, and to what extent will the output contribute to the intended outcome? Now, this is like, what are you doing, and how much of what are you going to accomplish along the way? And you need measurable data. And some of this can be, in the example that I used, we're very fortunate in that we've got some specific data that we can measure. Tons of carbon sequestered, kilowatt hours of electricity generated through the use of solar, gallons of rainwater harvested, things like that, pounds of food produced through urban farming. Those are all things that are real, mathematically measured. Other things are more subjective, that you have to conduct surveys. Then it's about the accuracy of the survey in collecting that data, because you have to take an abstract thought and then turn it into measurable data. And then that's a whole nother topic. But one thing I want to point out too, as far as an investor and an account holder, somebody deploying capital, the closer you are as an investor to the deal, the less you need data. If you're using your IRA account, your solo 401k, whatever it is, to lend money to somebody who's going to buy, renovate, sell, or buy, renovate, hold properties in a blighted neighborhood, and then they do that several times over, and then you can see the actual benefit. You're close enough to smell the barbecue cooking at the picnic on Sunday. You don't need data as much. You know that you've created an impact, and you don't have to measure it because you're not at a distance. So one of the things as far as distance on passive investing, you're going to rely more on that data. And so one of the things that you're going to want to watch for is, how does that line of communication flow? Do they publish what they're doing on an ongoing basis to where you can actively be a part of the story and actively watch what's going on, even though you're a passive participant? Or is it something to where your money is deployed and you never get to see it until the end, when the fund winds down and they give you a statement or something like that? That's also going to guide you on where you choose to place your funds and your capital. Do you want that interaction? Or is it just like, I know what I'm doing, I don't need to interact every day? So that'll dictate the flavor of what you do. You might want to make those small loans to an upstart business. You might want to place your fund passively in a private placement or a fund. A lot of that's depending, or a little bit of both, I think is fun. So an impact investors must answer those two questions as a basis of measuring their enterprise impact. So on to number 2, impact investment. benefits that impact investors can provide. And this is just going to guide you on some of the things that you can do. And then I'm going to share some specifics that took place for me. And you can do things below market investments. You can guarantee loans and pledge things. You can have a subordinated debt or equity position. Some of these are going to be familiar to you if you've done a lot of investments. If you're new and you're just getting into the active IRA deployment of your capital, these might be new. These are some terms that you can look up, and we're not going to go real deep into them, but just know that there are tools in your toolbox to where you're limited by your creativity alone. You can have that purpose of accepting non-traditional terms to meet the enterprise's needs. There's discerning opportunities that other investors don't see. And so, again, these are only examples. There's a creativity that I want to spark. I want you to be limited by your creativity alone and just really enjoy the creative process and the imagination. Even if you don't do anything and you spark this as something that's something you want to look at for a while and evaluate for a while, I think it'll be really enjoyable for you. So, non-monetary impact. This is improve the social output by providing non-monetary benefits. This is improving and enabling the environment for social enterprises investors. This is finding and providing impact investment opportunities, aggregating the capital. Now, on each of these, those can sound like big, lofty sentences, but starting here at number 2, where you've got finding and providing the impact, that's the visionary. That's the one who has the idea. The first one on providing an environment for social enterprise, I would put one word by that, and that's leader. You can provide leadership to help create that environment for things to actually happen. The finding and providing the impact, that's what you're actually going to do. That's the visionary. There needs to be an idea. On number 3 here, you can aggregate capital and provide other investment services. That's basically being a CFO. If you're the one who's helping make those financial decisions, and then I'm hoping these titles and positions help stimulate these thoughts is like, oh, hey, I have an aptitude as a CFO, but I'm not the leader. Well, then now you're going to know how to plug in your mindset into how you evaluate a certain scenario, and maybe look for opportunities to where you can actively be a part of something. Moving on down, number 4, providing technical governance assistance to enterprises. You could be a consultant or a mentor. Number 5 is recruiting investors. Everybody knows somebody. If there's something that you like to do, something you're passionate about it, I could tell you to not talk about it, and I'd probably have a hard time getting you to not talk about it. So once you find something that's passionate, it's really fun to share. And recruiting other investors is just storytelling, and I think you'll really enjoy it once you find your niche into it all. Securing and protecting the enterprise's social mission. My family, I shared the story about how I like a lot of different topics and go down a lot of different rabbit holes. And I have to surround myself with people who will keep me on point. And I have those things written and in writing and appointments set to measure them on purpose, because I do enjoy a lot of different things, researching a lot of different topics, as I feel everyone should. But if you either know someone who needs to be kept on point, or you are the one who keeps people on point, both of you are important, and enjoy the process. Just know who you are and how it relates to your impact investing. This is one of the last ones of the slides that I've got as far as introduction, and then I'll get into some more of the stories. But number 3, the non-monetary impact, quantifying non-monetary impact, and then does the activity increase the quantity or quality of social values outputs produced compared to what would otherwise have occurred? If so, how much? This is a little bit redundant, but it also just puts a period on the end of the sentence. And just consider your willingness to pay for services, finding the opportunities, doing your due diligence. Are you willing to do all of this? And do you have the time and the resources? And then lastly is the enterprise's willingness to pay for the technical assistance. So here are some trends, and I'll just sum it up that Impact investing has made a big splash, and it is only getting bigger. And if you talk to any investors who are 25 to 35, they are going to blow it wide open. They really have a focus. I'm talking to financial planners that are seeking me out because they want to talk because they see things happening. And impact investing is here, and it is one of the paradigms that I think is going to be a part of the landscape that is going to influence a lot of good and a lot of change. So why impact investing? Again, I mentioned it before, shifting paradigms, diverse and viable opportunities. It does nothing but create opportunities, and then that environment is where people can flourish. Who is making these impact investment? Fund managers like myself, private foundations. I mentioned that a fund, a for-profit fund, can work with a private foundation, even in a grant basis. Pension funds and insurance companies, that's more on a large macro scale. These are stocks, companies that are focused on things like that. And it might be a guiding principle and something they check in on. This is individual investors. This is somewhere where you can do right on the grassroots and do something at ground level that nobody else could do. You have a lot of power and influence, and really enjoy the thought on how to wield that and how to deploy that into the world. There's religious institutions. You see this in a lot of hospitals and a lot of charitable ventures that go across the globe, and there's many more. And I just would encourage you to plug in which one is you. How do impact investments perform? They have to perform realistically. I'm not going to go too deep into this slide, but it just illustrates the growth of impact and how it's increasing, and also just that the returns have to be reasonable and they have to be competitive. So there's a few cautions I want to slip in right here, because you can get all this optimism and you want to go do something, and then there can be some unintended consequence. I've met with experts in this area where I was sharing something that I wanted to do, and they just totally redirected me and said, make sure that you don't siphon money out of a neighborhood. Do create local loops. Any dollar that can circulate within a community multiple times will be far more influential and far more impactful than just one and done profit and something gets accomplished. Another caution is watch for impact washing. If everybody's wanting to invest for impact, if I'm recruiting investment money, I'm going to say, hey, look what we do. Make sure that you know how to drill deep into looking through that and actually what's being accomplished. Genuine connections. This is one of the things that I think is missing the most in our society, in our world, and that's through the presence of technology. We're very, very connected, but yet we're very disconnected. The virus and pandemic shut us all indoors and disconnected us from one another. And I think one of the things that people want the most right now is a genuine connection. And this is one great way to make it. And I would caution you to not do an investment like this unless you really feel like that connection is being made, and seek those out. I want to caution you to beware of investments without accountability or collateral. A good example of accountability that we have is we use a trustee. The money doesn't go into our business bank account when it comes into our investment fund. It goes into a trustee's account, and then it's dispersed under certain conditions. That's one example of accountability. Actually having money and capital tied to an asset is another good form of accountability in lieu of collateral. And that is something to where you really want to pay close attention to where does your money go? What does it do? How is it governed? Who has the pen that writes the checks? All of those things. Is it one person operating? Is it a committee? Is it a company? What are your checks and balances? Be very cautious, be very nosy, get to know that aspect of an operation before you deploy capital in there. And then stay grounded. Have some balance between logic and emotion. You do have to have logic. Your heart and your brain do need to connect on this. There's a lot of things that are desired to have happen that can be sold as a warm, fuzzy kitten, but at the end of the day, it's just a bad deal. It's just a bad investment. There's no way around it. So you really, if you're one to always point out the bad side of a deal, find somebody who's eager to do something just because it tugs the heartstrings. Have your own team that evaluates things. This can be peers, this can be colleagues, this can be other professionals. Just build out your own team and then have that conversation internally on your own. This is one of the main slides that I'd like to spend time on, that if you really wanted to do anything from this whole presentation, is just get in a quiet room and a blank pad of paper and go through these questions with yourself. What do I like? What do I dislike? If there's something that you dislike, find the part of it that you do like and do more of that. Because if you focus on eliminating what you dislike, it's kind of a negative aspect of things. And so I put both of them in there because they can be a good guide, but I do like the focus on the positive side of things. Where do I have an interest or a passion? If there was just a day, an hour, a week, money wasn't an object, geography wasn't an object, you could teleport, you could go anywhere with anyone, do anything, what would you do? Make it fun, make it productive, expand on these questions, but just use them as your guide. Where do I have an aptitude or an expertise? A good example of this one is there was an individual who worked his whole career as an X-ray technician on a piece of equipment that was discontinued, and met him at a conference, asked him about what he was doing, and these discontinued pieces of equipment were being utilized in other countries, and he was using his IRA to buy them and then lease them to hospitals in countries that would still utilize that technology. That investment would be absolutely absurd for anybody but him. So he took his aptitude, his expertise, his career, and he made it a fantastic asset-based investment for his IRA, and it was great. Where do I have trust? If somebody was going to give you money to do something, what would it be? Maybe you might launch a fund. Maybe you might contribute to or advise a fund or an investment. This is where if you're a contractor and you've renovated houses forever and you know your way inside and out, I'm going to have a real good level of confidence loaning you money to fix and flip or to buy and hold or renovate and hold. Where do you want to place trust? If you're a contractor and you've done it for years and you know how to evaluate something and you've got somebody who's a young operator that you've been mentoring and you can help, you might want to place trust in them, because working with your hands get old. And if you can't do it anymore, you're going to have to hand that baton on. And so you might want to look on where you want to place trust. What type of connection do I want to make in life? This is really, who are my people? Where do you find that? There's a couple of different places that I want to put out there just as a brainstorming on finding these things. But we're very, very connected. If you type in a topic on anything in on the internet, on your social media, professionally, on LinkedIn, things like that, you're going to find others who are interested in that. The internet is one of the best and one of the worst things as far as It's so much information, but it's also a great connector. And if there's somebody out there that's teaching on a topic that you like, just like I made myself available from 4:30 to 5:30 for the next couple of weeks for, conversations to brainstorm, this is something to where you can do that as well. And so just look out there. And then lastly, on finding your people, is like, where do I want to target and where do I want to impact? And so this is an example of the younger me. This is why I like doing what I do. Is somebody did it for me at a very young age. The young fella on the top left is me showing a sheep that our family raised on the farm. At the top right, there's my sister handing a check to Clinton Hodges, who is one of the largest breeders of Rambouillet fine wool sheep in West Texas. So we hooked that trailer up to the car, drove it out there to West Texas. And I remember as a kid, again, I was like probably about 7 or 8. And I remember writing a several $100 check to this large breeder of sheep, this large producer. And I was thinking, man, I'm a sweet little 4-H kid. How could this guy take this much money from me for this sheep? And I was like, oh, well, I've got a good 4-H project and I'm going to, do this with my family here on the farm. And this is what we're going to enjoy. Turns out what he did is he put the best of his show string in a pen and just let us pick, and sold it to us for a fraction of what they were worth. And that type of impact investing really made an influence on me and on my life. And then going through that process of raising animals, you can see how I aged through the process there. And then my sister, she's got the prize banner. That's actually a ewe that won grand champion at the state fair. That animal was born from 2 of the sheep that we bought from that major breeder. And so I think he got a bigger kick out of losing to us with one of the animals that was bred out of his stock that he sold than if he won himself. And then he also was key in the Breeders Association for that particular breed. The legacy that you can create with simple things like this are very valuable to the lives of many, many people. It was a big thing for our family to do and enjoy through the years, and it was something that sparked an interest in me. Moving forward, this is an example of the materials business that I had as a young man. And here in my 20s, right at the top right, you'll see a fellow with much thinner fitting clothes than now, standing in front of a pile of mulch. And what we did is we started a business. My dad, he's right in the picture next to me with a load of gravel going out, but he had the trucks and the land and knew about how to make a good materials business. And so he provided the land for the business, and then I provided the effort on structuring the business and learning the operation and the how-tos as a young fellow on an entrepreneurial level. I was hooked being an entrepreneur and a business operator from a young age. And this is another example of starting out in life, how I was able to do this. Now, the business that we had was one where we could take in brush and wood waste, grind it up, and make mulch, compost, soil amendments, things like that. So we were keeping tens of thousands of cubic yards of waste out of the landfill every year. And then that business built from a family business on up to a company that was sold to a large multinational company. You see them putting their sign over our sign right there at the end. We were able to sell and then operated that for them. And that was good for our family and a nice stepping stone and a nice transition. Bottom left is Glennis. You can tell by the age of the photo by the camera that she's carrying. You don't film with something like that with a tape anymore. It's all digital. But she was passionate about what we were doing and the things we were doing, and she enjoyed filming and doing. This was before YouTube. This was when you would circulate around a VHS tape. We made a little informational documentary, a little small informational thing, very similar to the classes that we're teaching to the kiddos there about recycling, about composting, about things like that. So it was something that I was passionate in and enjoyed doing. You see up there where the loader is pulling the load of brush off of the truck. That leads me to a story about an unintended consequence, going back to one of the cautionary tales that I explained earlier. Is there was my business doing at a profit all of this, and then on the county level, they pulled together grant money so they could do it for free in the same space that I was charging for it and doing it at a profit. And it was very detrimental to our business. And the only thing that I did differently is I unload these guys, and they were in and out in 5 minutes, and it was a fantastic fit for them. And so that was one of the competitive advantages that I had, that and just being entrenched in the community and doing things like this on a state level. But it was difficult. And so it's a word of caution, just to, make sure that you look for those unintended consequences. If you give something away for free, are you going to hurt somebody who's charging for it? And then evaluate whether you should or not. Down in the convertible, those aren't just two guys running around that made their way into the slideshow. Those are both municipal employees and state employees. They were fantastic mentors of mine, and you don't often find the public sector and the private sector, especially the regulatory sector, coming together in such a good way. It was a good industry. Everybody was supportive, and mentors were out there. Now, they dramatically affected my effort by providing good insight, good education, good training. I could go to the facility there in Austin and look and learn and tour and learn from Jody. I could go to Scott and with a question about something at any time, and he'd tell me if I was about to step in a hole. And so those mentor relationships were a valuable investment with their expertise, and it was good for me. Now, this is what we're doing now. This is the fund that we're launching. That's me up in the top left, standing in front of a wall made from industrial hemp. All we're doing is using the woody part of the industrial hemp plant as insulation in our homes. And I was drawn to it just because it's a superior product and a way to do it. But it's been fantastic to learn. There's been a lot of entrepreneurial energy released since the 2018 Farm Bill passed, legalizing industrial hemp. And it's something that I've modified for our investment fund. There's an example of the house that we're building in the bottom right. That's in the middle of the picture. That's my daughter and I out at a workshop where we're learning how to install the industrial hemp as the insulation. And then there's some others where you can see it being blown in or cast in place. And then that brings us full circle to the environmental impact of the built space, to where now we can make a direct connection between soils, to the built space, to the quality of life of a tenant that's going to occupy that property. And so that creates jobs. And again, the kids are there in front of the house. It's fun to do this with the family. And I hope this has been something that sparks a lot of interest. I'll make myself available just to spitball ideas, brainstorm things, consult about things, and we hope to share stories with you.
Excellent. Thanks, Ray. I appreciate that. And we do have a couple of questions. So we're right at time, so we'll make this a little bit quick, but we do have a couple of questions. First one is, what are the primary impact characteristics used in the Triple P fund?
The primary impact, I am going with the ones that are mathematical. This is carbon sequestered. I mentioned the hempcrete that we're using as the insulation. It's a carbon negative building material. And so it's very easy to put that on a scoreboard. We're actually building a graphic where it's like a high school sports scoreboard, to where we can have tons of carbon sequestered, all of those things like that. I will tell you that there's a lot of job training that we're doing. The San Antonio market is very dynamic. It's hard to find really reliable trades. And so we're going to high schools. We're actually going to prison release programs. And so some of the best work that we found were formerly incarcerated individuals that were coming out of being incarcerated right into something where they could learn a trade that was productive, and they were fantastic to work with, and formed some good friendships, and them coming back into society. It was very rewarding. That's a little bit harder to measure mathematically. So you see both sides of that, where it's like what can be measured mathematically and what can be measured more anecdotally, and then more socially. That's harder to measure. Sometimes you need to do that with where you take and establish a survey to put numbers to it. But I like things you can measure with numbers.
And this one maybe has two prongs to it, but maybe it says, can my IRA invest in a triple P fund? So I think I can answer yes on that.
Oh, yeah.
But I do want to, is it just accredited investors or non-accredited and accredited? How does that work?
Right now, we're starting out, and then as you look at Triple P or any other fund, that's one of the great questions. Right now, we're starting out as a 506B, and that's where you can have both accredited and non-accredited. There's a limit to the non-accredited that we can have. And then we're going to transition that into accredited only. And the reason for that is the laws are such to where you can't do general solicitation on a 506B fund. And so it's more friends and family, relationships you've built through, either educational avenues like this, networking conferences, we network with who are your people. And so if you're looking for where to place funds into something like that, find out who's doing those things. Maybe you, if you work or have a relationship with somebody who's good at business, and you would think that they would be a good fit for doing that. That was a natural progression of my real estate brokerage, because I was liquidating property for banks. I had investors that wanted to buy those properties. Banks stopped lending. And then so I had to perform weddings between private money and investors and the actual property to where it could be at. And so the natural progression of that is to where you can just like pool money and then be able to do that with much greater ease. But the caveat to that is there's some very strict guidelines about how to do that with good cause. Anytime money gets pooled and deployed, you want to make sure that that is one of the good functions of the government regulatory effort, and to make sure that bad actors don't come in and cause bad things happen. Do
you want to mention your availability once more before we sign off here?
Sure. I'm on the East Coast time. And so, any day between 4:30 and 5:30 is kind of when I'm making myself available. I'm very flexible outside of that. If you want to set a time to either, have a Zoom call, a phone call. I know things are a little bit strange as we're coming out of, or we're still in, pandemic protocols on things like that. But if you want to share and explore any ideas, then that's the time that I've made available for that 4:30 to 5:30 Eastern time for the next couple of weeks.
That's great. So I want to thank you again for your time and, putting together the slides and the presentation. So thanks again.
Thank you. It was fun.
Yeah, good.
I stirred up a whole lot of memories when I was going back. Had my mother pull out the pictures from when we were raising lambs. That was a lot of fun. And then I know my dad will get a kick out of all the old the trucking pictures. Again, it's something that my parents put me in a position to receive the benefit from impact investing when I was a kid, and then they've put me in a position to both grow as an entrepreneur and also to help others grow as an entrepreneur. And now it's something that I enjoy as well. I financed my son's lawn business primarily because I needed my grass cut. I wanted to have him do it. But he was making payments on the mower, and now he owns that thing. And so it's a lot more expensive because he's got the mower paid off. So all those things are fun.
Got it. Well, thanks again. And thanks everybody for joining us today. There really is a synergy, I think, between self-directed IRA investing and impact investing, because it is your own agenda. Yeah, it's your own agenda, and you're able to put that to work. So enjoy the rest of the day. Thanks for your time, and hopefully it was an educational experience for you, and happy investing. Bye, everybody.